So what got me in terms of this morning session and this, earlier on this afternoon in terms of work experience, it really got me thinking about my own experience of, some time ago now, around 15 years ago, when I did work experience. I did a stint at a summer school. And it was for children who had been excluded, and a programme at the time that the local authority were running to offer a summer school. And actually that opportunity only came to me because I knew the person, the teacher that was running it, and it was a family member, so I got given that opportunity. And, we've heard earlier in terms of this word luck, and that it shouldn't come down to who you know in terms of family, and it shouldn't come down to luck in terms of when you do get work experience opportunity. So it really got me thinking, and we'll use this session to dive into that a little bit more. So what do we mean when we talk about work experience? And there's a wide variety of ways that you can offer young people work experience. So of course we've got our short work experience opportunities, which traditionally are those kind of 2-week placements, but these can happen in a variety of ways in terms of job shadowing, but also longer placements. We know as part of T-levels that there's a 45-day placement as part of that. So I also just wanted to kind of draw upon in terms of what the research is also saying in this space, and that those young people who have the opportunity to take part in work experience are often more confident and are able to make better informed decisions about the sector that they would like to go in, and make some informed decisions. But also it's an opportunity to experience work and get those soft skills that you may not in other settings. But we know that access to work experience, across the country, there's lots of disparities. We've just heard from the census that actually only 36% of those in secondary education had access to work experience. There's been other research to show that pupils from independent schools, for example, have done many more placements compared to their counterparts in terms of those pupils from state schools. Those from disadvantaged backgrounds are also less likely to have taken part in work experience opportunities. But actually the overall number in terms of work experience opportunities that are out there, and the number in terms of young people taking part, has reduced over the past decade. So we're not talking about something that's happened in recent years. This has been a long-standing problem, issue that's happened. So in terms of that policy landscape, and going back to our panel that we had this morning in terms of a new government has come in, there's lots of excitement, there's lots of optimism in terms of what this new government is doing. There's been lots of talks about, of course, the 2-week work experience, but also allowing our young people to not do it in one stint, but to break it up. So to have that separate, encounters, be it kind of 1 day a week, but, use it as a hourly kind of 2-week placement rather than a 2-week fixed placement. Then there's lots of optimism. I've heard lots of things about that in terms of it's, could be potentially easier for employers to host that rather than having kind of all over the summer, for example, the first 2 weeks, having lots and lots of young people in secondary education looking for work experience at the same time. So we're going to delve into that a little bit more in this session. So I'm going to invite my panel members that are going to join me. So we've got Serena from Movement to Work. We've got Kitan, our very own youth ambassador, and you'll be familiar with Dean from this morning. So we've got Dean from Haven. So if you'd all like to just join me and take seats, we can give them a round of applause. Great, so Dean is going to kick us off with a little presentation about all the amazing things that Haven are currently doing. So I'll hand over to you, Dean.
Amazing. Yes, I'm back again. They've given me the lunchtime lull this time, so I'm going to promise that to try and not make you kind of drift off or fall asleep. But I'm here to speak about some of the work that we've been doing in the experience remit. And I'm going to take the first 2 or 3 minutes just to talk about me. Because I want to just talk about my experiences when I was at school. So I was fortunate enough to get a 2-week work placement when I was 15, which was to be a PA, a sports teaching assistant in a school. And I was privileged to get that opportunity. And what that opportunity did for me is it sparked a fire, ignited a fire inside my belly. It actually tapped into something that I was really, really passionate about, sports. I was a sportsman. I played nationally. I played for rugby. I was an athlete. But also, it engaged me in working with people, and it gave me a feeling of something that I enjoyed, to coach, to support, to guide other people. When I came away from that work experience, I felt that I'd found my niche. I felt that I had literally come away, and that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to go and be a teaching assistant or a teacher in a school, and I wanted to focus on sports. But 6 months later, I was told that I can't. That's something I can't do. And that took away the belief that from inside me straight away, because I couldn't do it because I wasn't academic enough. I couldn't do it because I was never going to go to university. Fast forward 25 years, I've made a successful career in developing and teaching adults in work placements. I've led the agenda for 10 or 15 years, and I've also had the opportunity to be a sports coach for rugby tots for over 7 years. I don't do it today because my legs are a little bit more creaky than they were, but it ticked all of the boxes, and that aspiration that I had when I was 15 that I was told I can't do, but actually I've gone on and done so much better. And that kind of leads me to the importance of workplace experiences within the education system and obviously for young people, and tapping into the things that people enjoy, but not just taking things at face value. I thought I had to be a PE teacher to fulfill my career dreams or to do the things that I was interested in. It turned out that I still could do all of that stuff without getting the further education, without getting the degree, and actually go on and potentially do it a lot better than I would have done at the age of 17, 18 years old. So moving on to the importance of creating experience then, something I'm really, really passionate about, having had that experience and doing the right thing by future generations, young generations in school. And I truly believe that this starts a lot younger than kind of 15, 16 years old. I believe that actually these experiences should start from the moment that we can gain access to young people, potentially when they move into high school. This is where you start to aspire, to engage, to create an opportunity for people to connect the curriculum, to learn about the career opportunities, but more importantly, to tap into those things that they're really passionate about, the things that they enjoy, the hobbies that they spend time doing, because all of that can connect to a future career. And I love the saying on the previous screen there, find a job or find a career that you enjoy doing and you'll never have to work a day in your life. And I truly believe that. I truly believe that saying. So what did we go out and do then? First thing we wanted to understand is that we need to understand kind of where schools were at in relation to kind of the Gatsby 8 benchmarks, and also what experiences would be beneficial to the school partners that we worked with. We knew that we had to have a core offering, something that we could offer as a core to any school across the nation. So the first thing we did was we took the Gatsby 8, we understood the curriculum, and we understood then what we offer as an employer and how those activities could link to the curriculum to build out a core offer of work experience. When we're done with that, we went in and spoke with teachers, students, to really understand what their needs were and how we could add value to them. And we appreciated what I said earlier. We appreciated that every individual was very, very different. What they wanted is they wanted a personalised experience. And that was really important for us as an employer, that we don't just create a generic work placement opportunity, but actually during that opportunity, we took the opportunity to sit and spend time with those students to really get to know them, to get to understand them, so that they can understand that everything that went on in our parks and how that linked to the things that they potentially enjoy in their lives. So our work placement or placement opportunities took two forms initially. We offer a virtual work placement opportunity because we appreciate there's different learning styles out there. People like to connect with employment in very different ways. And that consists of a number of videos that young people can come along, they can watch, they can view, they can get a real feel for who we are, what we're about as a business, the various different functions that we have that work within that business, and how that all then links back into education and potential thinking for their careers. All of that is guided by a workbook, so we encourage, as they're watching the videos, that they got the opportunity to reflect, to think about what it is that they're gaining, what they're learning, and how that might influence their choices moving forward. With that opportunity, I want to go one step further forward and look at how we can make that much more of a reality virtual work experience. How can we connect our teams through the screen to young people to bring about and to talk about all of the great careers that exist within Haven? And that's not just within our operational areas at our parks, but also our HEM offices where we have brand marketing, social, finance, people, HR, all of that great stuff, where we can inspire people to think slightly different within the catchment areas on our coastal regions. The second part was actually looking at how we can create in-person work experience. And coming out of COVID, that was non-existent. It just doesn't exist. It had all broken down, it'd gone away, and potentially not many people out there were thinking about it. So it was a great opportunity for us as we were bringing back to life the hospitality sector to engage young people and get them to consider or think about the very many career opportunities within our sector, and especially at Haven. So that one-day work experience we piloted in 2022 in Blackpool, purely because, again, there's high levels of social mobility opportunity, but also the fact that we've got two great parks there that actually can deliver this activity. The day itself, we aim to take students through a very mixed day. So they got exposed to various bits of activity across our functions, so that it wasn't just siloed or pocketed into one area. Important for us that they engage with our teams. Our teams were fully equipped. They were there to welcome the students as they came through, but also that they could relate to the students, and it wasn't just about the activity, it was just as much about the conversation. It's just as much about them talking about their career stories and talking about the jobs that they do and how that relates to potential thoughts and thinking as they were making their choices. Our work experience started off by immersing those students into culture and the importance of culture and our values, taking them through 5 different functions of F&B, activities and leisure, experience, holiday home sales, and also the 5th one, which has gone out of my head, but it will come back to me, facilities. That's the one, facilities. So again, a broad range of exposure to the very many different things that we offer in our parks. The benefit of that was actually they could start to then make the connections that needed to make. So what considerations did we have? Well, obviously in designing those, that work experience, the considerations that we had were to ensure that we could make it as inclusive as possible, that no one felt isolated, that everyone could join in, that we could take groups of students that had potential learning difficulties, learning needs, that were neurodivergent, and that our teams, again, were fully equipped to support those in the way that they would respond to. And that was a real win for us, that we could actually be inclusive regardless of background or demographic. What's worked, the things that have worked for us is actually the students coming on and actually being able to integrate and feel like a team member, and that was really, really important. The conversations that we made effort to ensure that happened through that work experience was really, really important. The actual flexibility that they had through the day to try new things and step into those things. to ensure that the day wasn't just a chalk and talk, it wasn't just a presentation, that actually they could get hands-on, they could try, they could actually take part in some of the activity that was taking place at the parks. But more so, it was the celebration at the end that they had achieved that in-person work experience. And we make sure that after every opportunity where we've delivered work experience, we step back and we recognise their achievement, and also we ensure that we continue that journey following the work experience. We stay connected, we remain connected, we think about the next steps that we've got to offer those students. So our future aspirations then are really to get bigger and better in this space. We started off in Blackpool with 80 in-person work experience. This year we've delivered 350 in-person work experience in Blackpool. Next year, we'll have 7 schools that we're operating alongside, where we hope to exceed over 1,000 work placement experience placements. And every year after that, we want to double down our efforts so that by 2027, 28, all of our parks are covered, and we're offering a minimum of 300 to 400 placements in each of our regions. We want to expand our virtual work experience so it can be much more interactive, much more question-based, more two-way is a prime. And we want to go from one day to have different models of work experience. The one day works really, really well for us, but actually what does a 2-day look like? What does a 3-day work experience look like? What does a 5-day work experience look like? Because those models will give, again, flexibility, but actually will ensure that we're really inclusive in our approach to the school's needs, but also the students' needs. This all connects really, really well through Explore and obviously Employ, because all the Explore activity that we do through workshops on behaviours, CV writing, interview techniques, prepares people for those work placements, prepares people for work. And the employability piece is that we've made a commitment that following work experience through our partnership schools, we will guarantee an interview to every student that wished to apply to come to Haven. That's a guarantee that we will give them as part of the approach we're taking. Obviously, when we extend that out, that creates much more opportunities for people to gain employment and jobs for us. The last thing we want to ensure that happens is that students see hospitality that's underrepresented as a career choice and not just a job. It was interesting when we first went into schools and we asked students, what does Haven do? The only thing they could come up with was bar work. They didn't really understand the landscape at all. By the time they left us on work experience, after completing work experience, they totally got it. They totally got it. Well, if I enjoy being outside, I can go and work in the gardens. I could go and work on maintenance. If I enjoy delivering experience and working with people, then there's lots of opportunity in food and beverage. If I enjoy being on stage or playing an instrument, then there's lots of opportunity to be part of our entertainments team. So again, it comes back down to those are careers for all, and we want to be able to showcase that, but not just showcase it as a job, a moment in time, but showcase it as a career opportunity that, yes, you may start as a team member, but actually you could be a future leader for Haven, and many of our team go on to do that from starting at that first step in. Thank you. That's it.
Great.
Amazing.
Thanks, Steve. Well, I think my first hurdle is going to check if this is working, and I think it is with the nods. Great. So, thanks, Dean, for that. We can see that, Haven are doing lots of great work, and we'll come on to some of that in a moment. I'm going to start off this panel with coming to you, Sarita. Just in terms of, if you could please, introduce movement to work to our floor, and also talk a little bit about the work that you're doing in terms of supporting employers, particularly supporting employers looking at work experience.
Thanks, Rupal. So Movement to Work is an employer-led youth employment charity. We were founded by business, for business, with young people at the heart of what we do. We were actually founded just over a decade ago by the then CEO of Marks & Spencer. And I guess his whole mission was, how does he bring together like-minded organisations to help tackle youth unemployment? And our mission, I guess a decade later, has still kind of stayed true to the core, which is how do we break the no experience, no job cycle that traps so many young people starting out in their careers, with a special focus on those who are NEET. And we do this by working with employers and youth outreach organisations to really support young people into work. And our whole concept is around creating work experience opportunities that are ideally a meaningful pathway into employment, and that could be an apprenticeship, or equally that could be a job. And I think that bit is really important, because sometimes for young people and the young people we speak to, sometimes just getting that kind of first foot into the door could be just working within a store. Getting that first paycheck could be as simple as that, and that is kind of the aspiration they're working to. So we kind of try and take two folds from work experience, making sure there's ideally a meaningful outcome. And I kind of describe us sometimes as that kind of thread between employers, youth outreach organisations, and then young people themselves. We're really there to act as a convener of business and really, I guess, showcasing what best practice is, what good looks like when it comes to work experience, and how can we come together and really support young people who need it most. And that's kind of what we've been doing for over a decade. And I guess from a movement to work perspective, we offer fully funded professional support to employers that are looking to be part of our movement. And that's fully funded professional support from some of the biggest organisations that back our charity. And for over a decade now, we've created over 190,000 opportunities for young people. And we're really proud to say like 89% positive outcomes. So young people go on to secure employment, or equally they go on to further their education and training as well. So really positive. And I think for us, it's very much like that family, being together and working together at what we cannot solve alone.
Great, and it comes back to that conversation that we were having this morning in terms of systems, and you're playing a real crucial role here in terms of supporting employers and bringing young people closer to employers. I guess my second question is in terms of what evidence has Movement to Work collated over the years in terms of what works in terms of having good quality work experience programs for young people.
So I think we've specifically targeted to support young people who are NEET, and I often get asked, why is that your focus from a Movement to Work perspective? And then what does that actually mean when it translates to actual work experience on the ground and what employers do with young people? And I think for us, it's like that 946,000 that LJ mentioned kind of this morning is more than a statistic. It's very much a young group of young people that are ultimately unable to fulfill their potential, not by choice, but because there's not the opportunities out there to support them. And I guess for us, over the many years we've been doing this, we've been working with businesses across industry to really understand what works best for these young people and how do we make sure what we're doing is really, really meaningful. And I think everyone's kind of touched on this today, which is there's no one-size-fits-all when it comes to work experience and how we approach it. It has to be tailored. And one thing that I talk about often, because I come from a very corporate background and then I'm seconded into my role at Movement to Work, is that actually it has to work for young people, but equally it has to work for business. This cannot be just an add-on. It has to be embedded. It has to be integrated into what businesses do so that 10 years down the line, it's not like, oh, we couldn't do that anymore. It has to be, we're doing more and we're doing more for young people. So we look at the approach to work experience in three ways. We look at the kind of pre-work experience, and I honestly think this is probably the most important part, really, because it's the kind of first step that a young person is taking to embark on the opportunity of work experience. And actually, if employers don't get this bit right, then actually the rest of it will fall as well. So the first part is how do we make sure that the opportunities that employers are providing are incredibly inclusive. They're really supporting those that maybe wouldn't have necessarily thought about that career or opportunity or even that organisation. And we do a lot with, I guess, sharing with employers what's the best way to attract and also go out and find the best young people that are going to be inevitably going into these opportunities. And for us, it's how do we reach those that are ideally furthest away from the job market. So these are the young people that wouldn't necessarily engage. And there's a lot of our partners here today, whether that's Youth Build, Carers Trust, etc., that ultimately we work with to try and get to those young people that wouldn't have inevitably thought about working in all of the organisations that we work alongside. And then the second is around one of the things that I'm really passionate about is how do we find innovative ways and work with businesses and employers to really kind of break down that first step, getting into work. And we launched some research earlier this year, which was all around generative AI and what's the role of Gen AI to break down barriers and support young people into work. At the very early stages of that recruitment process, and when we started talking about this with our partners, the King's Trust and Microsoft, Accenture, it was very much like, a lot of young people come to us and say, got no work experience. What am I going to talk to an employer about? And interestingly, I spoke to my niece on the weekend and she was like, how does it work? Do you need work experience to get work experience? And I was trying to explain that whole concept to her. But the research that we've launched, which I do think is generally groundbreaking, it's around like, if you are a young person that has no work experience, how can you use generative AI to think about the other transferable skills that you have, and how do you market yourself in an incredibly different way? Not the copy and paste, it's always about human in the loop, but how do you market yourself in a different way? And I think what we learned with that research is really eye-opening, in that young people aren't using this technology, not because they don't want to, but because they think that they're going to be penalized by employers for doing so. And actually, the employers we're talking to are saying, no, like we wouldn't penalise as long as young people are using it responsibly. So then I would go back to employers and say, well, you should be telling young people that, because then they're not going to think this is a barrier. They'll be actually using it to support them into work and I guess that initial challenge that they're facing. And then you talk about kind of during. For me, this is very much around like the concept of experience. Work experience is not about forcing a young person into a job. It's about giving them that genuine experience and getting them to think about, is this a career for them? Is this a job? Is this a role for them? And really kind of bringing that whole concept of experience together. And a lot of this comes down to what we've spoken about today, which is a lot of young people, this is the first step into employment for them, the first probably engagement they've had with an employer. So how do you ensure that from an experience perspective, they're having the most positive experience, they're building on those soft skills? Majority of young people won't have the confidence at that kind of experience stage. So it's very much kind of starting off with those soft skills. And also one thing that we've seen works really well with employers is where they're ultimately not just doing mentorship, but they're also offering that buddy scheme, and they're pairing up young people with someone that's either gone through the same path as them, trying to get into this organization, or who's genuinely really relatable. And then finally, the post experience is really, really important. It's about, one, for businesses, measuring the impact. You have to know whether this is working or not, and how do you kind of tailor and adjust as you go along the way. This genuinely has to be agile. It's not, here we go, we've done it, and that's us for forevermore. And then I think when it comes to post experience as well, it's kind of following that journey for that young person, because inevitably they may end up in employment with that organization, or they might not. So it's following that journey and seeing how you can support them. And what we found at Movement to Work with some of the employers we work with is that there's a genuine return on investment when employers get this right. And there's two organizations that I feel really proud to be kind of working alongside, and their kind of return on investment speaks real volumes. So one being M&S, we work closely with them, and when we did kind of a return on investment and tried to understand the impact of their programs through our ROI calculator, what we found is that for M&S, there's kind of like 90% of young people go on to employment, and then for BAE Systems, on the flip, when we look at the impact that's going back into their organisation, there's 151% return on investment. So for every pound that they're spending, they're making that pound plus 51 pence back, just based on going through Movement to Work and recruiting through that avenue as opposed to traditional.
Great. Thanks, Serena. And I'm so glad, not that I'm doing a plug for the benchmark at all, because that's what we've been discussing today, but just in terms of you discussing that support, during support, and that post-support of what makes work experience high quality is exactly, and I know a lot of our employers today will be really familiar in terms of how the question set is set out for the benchmark in terms of the practices that we're monitoring is really guiding that journey of a young person. So, Ketan, I'm going to come to you, and that gives a nice segue. I guess, as a young person, can you share your experiences in terms of work experience and, kind of the benefits and the impact that it's had on you?
Yeah, sure. So I'm in my first year of university right now, but I think the main part where I was introduced into having to gain soft skills and those transferable skills that can get me into the professional world of work was the jump from year 11 to year 12. I guess you could say I was thrown into the deep end, because people my age, we're not really told about what we have to do. We kind of have to find it out for ourselves. I had to get a part-time job in sixth form. That I think gave me a big advantage. I think any type of experience that you can get. I was a waitress. I got to work on my communication skills, time management skills, talking to customers, but then also higher ups and also my colleagues. It's kind of trying to find that language that you need to speak to them, because the language that you speak to your friends and the language that you speak to your managers isn't the same. Found that out. But then also, my school, they would have career fairs, but it would be the type that was mentioned earlier, where you have a basketball and they would have sweets on the table and they just told you what you'd do, but you don't really understand what it's like for a young person to actually be in that role. So I think if I were to go back and be in that position now, I would kind of explain to my school that there's some communication that needs to happen between the young people and the companies that are coming to work. There was a week in my school that was held where we had to go out and find some work experience. Now, I thought going into it, we had maybe a month or two to kind of find the place we would go to. So I was emailing, because at the time I wanted to go into law. So I was emailing law firms, emailing courts as well, just to see if I could go and shadow someone like a solicitor or a barrister. And I kept getting back either, no, sorry, you haven't got any options, or we just don't provide that type of thing at all. And I actually ended up going back to my primary school because it was familiar for me, and I was able to shadow my teachers. So I got to realise what I was like as a child and see how different, I guess, it was back then. So I think overall, my education experience, I guess, I would say that I think I would want more. I would want more options that are available, because it's always university. Oh, what are you going to study at university? What degree do you want? And I found out myself that there was other options like degree apprenticeships or apprenticeships that were available to people my age. I think there should be more advocacy for all of that. It shouldn't have to be something that I go out and find. I guess on the bright side, I did kind of I got an initiative. I was able to go out and find the stuff that I needed, but sometimes it's nice when you don't know anything at all to just kind of do that yourself, have the people around you, like the teachers that you know, that you see every day, kind of show you these options that are available to you.
Thanks, Ketan. Yeah, and we've heard a lot in terms of from our census this year as well, in terms of young people wanting more support from schools in terms of navigating work experience opportunities, and they're not getting that support, and often they're turning to family and friends to get it. And it actually really made me think, Dean, I'm going to go off script here, but I think that you'll be great at it. I was at an event a couple of weeks ago where there was lots of employers there, lots of people from the education sector. We're talking about here, where young people are saying that they want more support from the education sector. And all of the educators that were there it's a struggle to engage employers. It feels like a bit of a sales pitch. They're trying to reach out to ensure that they can get work experience opportunities for their students. So I kind of want to ask you, as an employer, kind of what advice would you give to schools who you want to do this but are really struggling with navigating, meeting up, kind of making those connections between employers and young people?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, actually. I think I'd say to any of the education system is to reach out to the employer. I think it kind of happens both sides, actually, because it can be really challenging for employers to kind of connect with the education system or with local schools. So I think there's something there around how can we make that much more easier. And I think that we've got some schools out there that have full-time or dedicated careers advisors and careers staff. And then there's others where they're utilising teachers to do almost a dual role where, 9 times out of 10 they're going to be in the classroom that as an employee you kind of really want to have that conversation or you really want to get things mobilised. So I think there is a gap there, an opportunity, because I think from both sides really see the value that it brings. Both sides really want to kind of embark on that journey and create the programs that are going to be beneficial for the school and for the student. But actually there's challenges in between at the moment that complexity needs to be removed so it can really happen effectively.
Yeah. And then thinking about, I guess, pathways, so a real big key finding from our benchmark is thinking about the pathway of after-work experience. So we have found that 8% of young people get opportunities to interact with the same employer that they've done their work experience with post the work experience placement. Only 8%. So can you talk a little bit about, the support that you provide and what your team are doing in terms of for those young people having done the work experience placement and what happens beyond that?
Yeah, I think it comes back down to something someone said earlier, actually, is that the earlier you can get in with students and start working with students, the longer you can be with them, and obviously you've got the more opportunity to kind of inspire them through that journey. So a lot of people will leave it to years 9 and 10 to actually first make that first introduction, and by that time a lot of their decisions have been made, or they've been influenced by their adults, their parents, to think or to go after certain things. I think about how we can start that journey right from the outset, and it is that dual piece there around. It's not just engaging the students, the young people. It's actually how can we engage or communicate to the adults and the parents who are the influencers to ensure that they're both on that journey, so that Haven becomes a brand of choice, a brand of thought all the way through. Once they've done their work experience with us, so later on in that journey, it's important that we go back to them, we evaluate it, so we evaluate our work experience really, really closely, but also we look at opportunities on how we can carry that journey forward. And I've mentioned that we're fortunate as an employer that we have lots of summer job opportunities, and we're in a place where we can guarantee those interviews with the students that we work with, and that's one way where we can capture then and potentially create career pathways for many of those students that we're working with at school.
Fab. Great. So I think for the next part of our panel, we're going to go out to the floor and get a few questions if we can. So I think Ellie and Laura are here with our mics. So if you could just raise your hand if you've got a question for Serena, Kitan or Dean, that would be great. Eleanor.
Hi guys, question perhaps to Dean. We talked a little bit about the political environment at the current time, and one area of focus is on cutting down on zero-hour contracts and atypical work, all this kind of stuff. But I'm interested about how you use temporary placements and make them into almost career opportunities for people. So managing temporary staff perhaps in a way that makes them want to come back and perhaps even go into permanent work in your organisation.
It's a great question. I think a lot of that actually is around the support that we give those seasonal team or those annualised team, is the fact that they are treated just like a member of team. We keep those the conversations going. I think that's really important. We're curious, we're inquisitive from the moment they start. We ensure that we learn about them, but we also learn how we can support them right from the outset. Unfortunately, we're in a business where we can't support apprenticeships at the moment because a minimum term of apprenticeship is a 12-month, and we do close during the winter period. Hopefully that will change over the course of the duration. But I think it's really showing interest, making sure that they're happy in the work that they're doing, making sure they feel well supported in the work that they're doing, that they're actually getting out of bed, regardless of the contract type, with a spring in them steps. It goes back down to that kind of find something that you love and you never feel like you do a day's work in your life. And I think if we can create that environment, we can make those connections to the things that people enjoy, they're going to want to keep coming back. And the opportunities then present that we can turn that into full-time employment over a period of time. Some would be sooner, obviously, but we keep working with them. I think that's the best we can do at the current time.
Hi, I've got the mic. Sorry, it's another question for Dean. I was really interested to hear that you've taken the steps to guarantee an interview for those who've done work experience with you. I don't know how long you've been doing that, but I'd love to know a little bit more about that. Like, what trends are you seeing? How long does it take a young person to come back to you for those who have taken you up on that offer? And logistically, as an employer, how do you handle that data? How are you holding on to the data of who's done work experience so that you can track that, or is it a sort of honesty, a sort of a trust basis?
Yeah, so it's typically working kind of with the Year 11 students, and I think obviously they're in a prime position where they are looking for those opportunities, having completed their GCSEs. So what we tend to do is we tend to open an expression of interest up, which is really important. So there is no kind of laborious application process that they have to go through, and it's working directly with the schools. So we market directly to the students, we market directly to the guardians or the parents. We encourage them to apply, guarantee the interview. It's the first time we've done it this year. We've done it in Blackpool, and it proved really, really successful in conversion rate through application. So something that definitely we're committing to moving forward. And the main majority of our opportunities are summer jobs where we're really going into that super peak. So it's a great opportunity to gain further exposure.
Thanks, and I think we've got a question.
I think I've got the mic, sorry. Thank you. This is a question for Kitan. So there's actually two parts to my question. The first one is, how early do you think that employer engagement, career support should come into a young person's education? Let me ask that question, I'll come back to the second one afterwards.
I think it should start as early as possible, really. But because you always I think students should always be aware of what their options are in the future. But I think the main part that I started to really think about what I wanted to be when I was older was probably around year 9 or year 10, or when I was introduced to doing GCSEs, because that's when you pick the subjects that you want to kind of take further forward. It's always nice to know that employers are looking out for the people that are going to be in their company in the future, and knowing that from when I'm around 14 or 15, I think it creates a sense of stability and less anxiety in knowing the fact that employers are looking forward to new people joining their company.
Thank you. And then my second question is around, what about the families? What do you think should be some of the support we might provide to parents, carers, to those young people?
In my experience, my parents, my mum in particular, she's always been very consistent about me gaining soft skills, because she always told me that those soft skills would then be transferable to working in any type of setting, from getting communication, teamwork. I think introducing things like having a hobby, like joining a sports team or doing dancing or something like that, it kind of creates a background, a foundation for the skills that you'll need when you're older. And having that from when you're young is, I guess it sets you up for the rest of your life, I guess, really.
Can I ask the panel a question in terms of how you ensure that equity, diversity and inclusion are a cornerstone of your policies in terms of work experience?
I'm really struggling to see up here. Sorry, is that question for me? Someone, do you want to take that, Serena?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to diversity, equity and inclusion, and particularly the demographic that we're trying to serve, I think it goes back to what I'd mentioned. This can't be an add-on. It has to be fully integrated. So if organisations are invested, this can't be a tick box exercise. They have to be doing it because they genuinely care, and they see, like I said, the return on investment for them as an organisation. And when it comes to embedding policies, we're looking at it in a slightly different angle because we're not the employer. But where we see it work really well is when organisations are genuinely saying, we're going to serve and support young people that are neat, but we're also going to look at the other things that matter. It doesn't need to be or, it can be and I'm often speaking to businesses where they say, we care about getting young people into work, We care about supporting those that are in need. But actually, one of the things that we're really invested in as an organisation is maybe supporting those that are care experienced or supporting those that may be ex-offenders. And I'm always like, well, you can do both. And I think that's where the diversity and equity and inclusion bridge comes in, that you can do it all, but it's finding a way that works best for your business and embedding that into the organisation.
Thanks, Serena. We'll go for one last question.
Thank you. I'm also for movement to work, so Serena, this one definitely isn't for you because it's be weird. Dean, this is back to you. You're obviously doing some great work with schools and school children. Is there plans for Haven to do anything with neat young people from like an older demographic of young people, so particular backgrounds, maybe like care leavers or young carers or young people that are between the ages of 16 or 30 that are looking for an opportunity that have maybe fallen between the cracks? Is that something that Haven are potentially looking at doing as well?
Yeah, 100%. I think our rule of thumb has always been go slow to go faster. And I think, we could have jumped right in the frying pan 2 years ago and said that, do you know what, we're going to do it all. And that would have been the wrong thing to do, because we would have just got a bit of a grey area and probably wouldn't have been successful in our job of delivering it. But certainly everything is on our radar. We're focused very much on kind of the social mobility aspects right now, neurodiversity, and how we can kind of get working more closely to that agenda as part of our D&I agenda. I think when you start to branch out, it's not just then about the work experience. And I think this is really important, is that you need to understand what the other challenges are that come with that demographic. So from a social mobility point of view, it's one thing to say that we're going to create work experience placements, but there's a lot of people that potentially can't get the transport to and from the park. There's a lot of those students that potentially are on free school meals that will need a lunch whilst they're with you. So it's thinking about everything that needs to be put in place. But to answer your question, I'm going around about the long house, but yes, we are. It's part of a much longer term plan.
Thanks, Dean. And we often say that to our employers who complete the benchmark, that this is a long journey, and actually just taking those first steps and setting out and then going into plugging some of those gaps is kind of just taking that first step is really useful, and then to look at all the various other bits that come along in terms of developing programs. I'm going to close this session, just time conscious, but can we all just give a round of applause to our panel this afternoon?